I believe we are live. I believe we are live. I believe it, I believe it. Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to yet a late episode of Red Stone Lapis Lazuli. It is I, your host, Pogo Kiddo. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm here. Java. There we go. I'm still in Minecraft. Yay! Oh wait, it's gonna crash. It's gonna crash. It always crashes. Every time. I don't know why that is, but every time it crashes when I switch from OBS back to Minecraft. I don't know why. I don't know why. It was a change someday and it just messed up things. I don't know what happened. I don't know. But yeah, now I'm waiting for the whole Minecraft thing to come back in and it's slowly going. So yeah, I did not do my show yesterday. I've been for the past couple weeks. I've been really sick. Like, it started off with a fever and body aches, and then it progressed. I'm not even outside, and it progressed to congestion, but not just any congestion. It was some pretty hardcore congestion. Like, I can't breathe type congestion. Like, if I lay down, I start to drown type congestion. So it was not pleasant. It was pretty bad. Was not a happy camper. I mean, it was. I mean, like, it was serious. Like, I quit smoking marijuana. I stopped smoking marijuana because of my sickness. I stopped like 2 weeks ago. Because, yo, dude, who wants to have a bunch of like smoke in your lungs when you already can't breathe? It sucks. It was awful. Yeah, it was terrible. So I quit smoking marijuana. Because yeah, and here let me tell you, right? Especially for you youngins, because you think you're invincible and everything, right? I'm like middle aged. I'm middle aged. I'm 47. I'm middle aged. Uh, and I have been smoking marijuana for years and years and years because I read all the literature. I know that marijuana smoking does not contribute to lung cancer in the way that smoking tobacco does. For some reason, smoking cannabis does not do the same kind of damage that smoking tobacco does. So I thought, hey guys, I'll be fine if I just smoke marijuana and avoid the tobacco. Avoid the tobacco, only do marijuana, and you should be good to go. Well, let me tell you, that is not the case. Not the case. You may be doing marijuana and only smoking, like, maybe you're only smoking marijuana and you're thinking you're avoiding all the lung damage associated with tobacco, but that's not the case. So I was, like I said, I was pretty sick. I was pretty sick. I don't think I have COVID because I did 2 COVID tests and both were negative, except the COVID tests were like ancient. So who knows if they're valid anymore. But in any case, I was really sick with congestion. And anytime I laid down to go to sleep, I started to drown. I couldn't lay down to sleep. I had to get up and go spend a half hour like in the shower coughing up my lungs so I could like try to sleep. And what that did was, when I started coughing up my lungs, I was really coughing to get all that shit out of it, all that stuff that was in my lungs. And there was a lot of stuff in my lungs, let me tell you. It took a while. But the thing I noticed while I was coughing my lungs out was that all this ash, that's what I mean, ash that had gotten into my lungs. I was smoking with a bong, right? But it doesn't matter if you use a bong or whatever, because you're still that smoke, that's the smoke that you inhale, like doesn't get filtered out of the water. You have to inhale the smoke, and the smoke is the source of the ash. What is smoke except really, really fine burnt up material, really fine particulates, very, very fine particulates in the air. That's what smoke is, fine particulates. And those fine particulates eventually end up in your lungs. Like, because like that's what it is. It's smoke. It's like fine particulates, and they get deposited in your lungs, and they don't go away. They just sit there in your lungs, and it's gross. So I was sitting there coughing up years and years worth of ash that had been deposited in my lungs. That I was compounding the sickness I already had. It was awful. It was awful. And I was like, oh my God, I can't breathe. And this is bad. This is terrible. I never want to do this again. Plus, I'm sitting there coughing up black loogies. So much ash in my lungs that I was coughing up shit that it was black. It was like, it was clear on the edges, right? But in the middle was black. It was black because I was coughing up ash. Oh, it was awful. And here I thought I was being smart by not smoking tobacco, only smoking cannabis. No. Any kind of smoking is going to damage your lungs. Any kind of smoking is going to deposit ash inside your lungs, which doesn't go away. It just sits there until you hack it up and cough it out. And it was in there deep, guys. I had to like really, really reach deep into my lungs to cough out and cough up all the stuff. It was not pleasant, but I finally did it, and afterwards, it wasn't like for free. all that coughing took a lot of energy out of me. It cost me a lot of energy to do it, and my chest and stomach muscles were sore afterwards from using these muscles I don't normally use to cough up stuff out of my lungs where I don't normally reach. It was such a bad experience. So I was sick for like 2 weeks, and it was bad. So get your COVID booster shots, wear a mask, and don't get sick, and don't smoke anything. Don't smoke anything. Oh man, so sick for 2 weeks. It was terrible. Yeah, I had a plan to go fly to Reno, Nevada to go see my family back in Nevada. And I had to cancel my plans, cancel my ticket, eat the cancellation fee, and spend my vacation, my Thanksgiving vacation, instead of eating turkey with my family and being all grateful with them. Instead, I was at home trying not to die. At night, I would sit there. I'd like use my asthma spray. I'd like use a bunch of pillows to not be laying down flat so I wouldn't drown. I would take showers with hot water to get the steam to help me cough up all the crap that was in my lungs. Oh God, it was so bad. I couldn't sleep. Because I couldn't, if you can't lay down without drowning, you can't sleep. So it was I didn't rest very good. It was just awful. And I'm glad that I've gotten better. I'm really glad that I've gotten better. Oh yeah, plus I live by myself, and I don't really have like much in terms of a social support network here in Salem. I don't really know anybody here in Salem. I lived here like 9 years, dudes, and I don't know anybody. It's awful. It's so bad. It's so bad here. Anyways, so yeah, if anything went wrong, I would have been in deep shit. So it was like rough. And then I was thinking, man, how do like other people do it when they don't have a social support network? Like, damn, that's got to be really, really hard. And I lucked out. Like, I got sick on my week vacation when I already had the time off, so I didn't have to worry about like missing work or anything, because I just ate up my vacation instead of going on a vacation. And yeah, it was awful. If I needed that week, I needed that full week, that whole week, just to get better and lay and do nothing. Like, that's not true. I didn't lay and do nothing. Like, well, mostly I did nothing. I didn't go out. I didn't do anything. I did like the bare minimum. I had to go grocery shopping. I had to take the trash out. I had to do laundry. Like, there's some things you have to do. But in the meantime, I made this bridge. Check it out. What a nice bridge, right? Ooh, pretty bridge. Pretty bridge. So this bridge now connects my little peninsula with the savannah. So eventually I'm going to make it so I have horses to ride. But yeah, and I put all the different color blocks, the frog lights underneath. So it looks pretty. It's pretty. It's a pretty bridge. And the design is my own design. I don't know what I was doing. I just did it. And then also, in the meantime, I also made a barn. A barn. I made a barn. I made a barn. Ta-da! The barn. Here's the barn. The barn. What's wrong with you? Were you born in a barn? So here's a barn. It's all wood, mangrove wood with birch, stripped birch logs, and I think that's oak. That's oak. Those are oak logs, and that's spruce right there, and birch. Yeah. So I got my 4 horses over here. They're just chilling. My 4 horses. I've got some cows living here, but because I've never actually lived on a farm, I don't really know what a barn looks like. So this is my best attempt. Oh, I got a bed in here in case anyone wants to crash in the barn. Got no place to stay? Sleep in my barn. Got the loft to keep the hay. I don't know. I don't know what you do with a loft in a barn. But yeah, with a bed. So people can sleep in the barn, in the manger if you need a place to sleep. Sleep in the manger if you need a place to sleep. All right, and then I also... Wasn't there a hill here? Yes, there was a hill here. There was a big fat hill here. Also, there was a giant ass hole over here. Both the hill has been deleted. So the hill's deleted, and the hole is gone. So yay! I've healed the land. Healed the prairie, at least for that part. So, good on me, right? It's nice right now because, like, what time is it? 4:30. Both my neighbors, my upstairs neighbors, are gone. They're at work, so it's so much quieter now. So much nicer. I'm being loud now because I'm like doing my show. But like, it's only talking, right? I only talk. It's not like I like stomp around or anything. All right. So I'm doing my show. I have to do my show quickly before like the rest of my neighbors get home. I do have stuff. One of the things I want to talk about is, well, quickly, right? I don't have a whole lot of stuff because like I got sick, right? So, but one of the things that happened in the meantime since my last show was Joe Biden called for a ceasefire in Gaza, and the Netanyahu government finally agreed to a ceasefire. They finally agreed to the ceasefire. And so they started to exchange hostages. You know, Hamas took hostages and Israel has hostages. So they're doing a hostage exchange. Hamas took a bunch of hostages on October 7th, just a whole bunch of Israeli hostages. And Israel has been taking Palestinian hostages just left and right just over the years. They just pick up people and they hold them. Pick up kids, they pick up women, they just pick them up and hold on to them for no reason. So they're hostages. So Israel, they finally agreed to a hostage exchange where Hamas exchanged their hostages for the hostages held by Israel. So that's happening. It was a 4-day, and then Joe Biden arranged for it to extend for 2 more days. Okay, so that's good, right? A ceasefire starting, that's good. But what would be fantastic would be to like make it a permanent ceasefire. Make it so that no one's got to be shooting anybody anymore. No Hamas shooting anybody, taking hostages. No Israel shooting anybody and taking hostages. Let's just stop with the hostilities, right? That will bring us back to our original problem of what do we do in this situation? We still haven't resolved the question of Palestine. Where are the borders of Palestine? That has never been resolved. You can't have the borders of Israel if you don't have the borders of Palestine, right? Because Israel's built on top of Palestine. So since Israel's built on top of Palestine, you got to know where Palestine is in order to know where Israel is. So like, fine and dandy that they got a ceasefire. Good, fine. But it's not, it's just going to set us up for another big fight unless we take care of the issue of where are the borders for Israel and Palestine. Where are the borders? If you can't answer that question, if you can't answer the question of where are the borders of Israel and Palestine, then all you're doing is setting up the next October 7th or the next Israeli genocide of Gaza. That's all you're setting up. You're setting up another October 7th attack and another genocide, ethnic cleansing. Because Bibi Netanyahu, for sure, wants to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. He wants to get rid of them. He wants to just get rid of them all and take the land. So he's not a good partner to work with. I'm glad Joe Biden got a ceasefire, but Joe Biden and Bibi Netanyahu have two different goals. Bibi Netanyahu wants to make one state where there are no Palestinians and only Israel, whereas Joe Biden wants a two-state solution. And I'm not so sure he's keen on funding the genocide. He apologized for questioning the Gaza death count. He said he's sorry that he ever questioned it. Good. I'm glad that American president can apologize and recognize his mistakes. That's a good first step. I'm glad Joe Biden got an extended ceasefire. I'm glad he got the ceasefire, and then I'm glad he got it extended. Now what I need Joe Biden to do is to rein in Bibi Netanyahu, extend the ceasefire, and get Netanyahu to commit to the borders of Israel. If we can figure out where he thinks the borders of Israel are, if he can, because it's not, Netanyahu is not the end all be all of everything. We can just get his opinion of where the borders of Israel lie. And then we can figure out, where are the borders of Palestine? And then we can figure this out so it doesn't happen again. Bibi Netanyahu is not going to win. He's a dead man walking in terms of politics. He's over. So who cares what he thinks, right? But the dude only wants a one-state solution. The dude wants genocide. So we can't be working with the guy anymore. Bibi Netanyahu's done. He's not a reliable partner. You got to get rid of him. But yeah, if Joe Biden can finally get a two-state solution to work, that would be the greatest accomplishment of an American president in a long time. I know Clinton came close. He came close, but it didn't work out. I think an Israeli settler assassinated the Israeli person, and that ended the two-state solution. When we're almost there, and then an Israeli settler killed the Jewish guy, the Israeli guy, and the deal fell through. That was like 30 years ago. If Joe Biden can get a two-state solution going, that would be fantastic. I would be very, very, very happy with Joe Biden if he can do that. Now, the other thing to talk about. Now here's the thing, right? If you support a ceasefire in Gaza, if you do not support genocide, the Israeli genocide in Gaza, and you are vocal about it, you speak out about it, and you use your platform to let people know that you do not support the genocide in Gaza, that's a dangerous position to have in the United States. You will be attacked for having the position of no genocide in the United States. For example, Melissa Barrera, she's an actress. She was going to be in Scream 4, but she spoke out against the genocide in Gaza. She spoke out against the genocide in Gaza and called for a ceasefire. And because she called for a ceasefire in Gaza, she got kicked off the movie. She lost her job. She essentially got fired for calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. So, right? Pretty dangerous to, there must be a lot of Zionists in Hollywood. Another person, Susan Sarandon, was also dropped by her Hollywood talent or her Hollywood agency because she's not a Zionist. She's calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. So again, it's not for free to be anti-genocide in the United States. There's a lot of pro-genocide people in the United States. For real. For real. I'm not even joking. I mean, come on, dude. The United States is built upon genocide. It's still an issue we're dealing with because a good portion of our population are white supremacists who are trying to overthrow the democracy and overthrow the United States. Yes, we have a problem here in the United States. So it's not free to be anti-genocide. It costs you to have a moral stance. Top CAA agent Mahala Dakil ignited a firestorm with their Instagram posts, including one that said, "What's more heartbreaking than witnessing genocide? Witnessing the denial that genocide is happening." In response, Dakil was relieved of her duties as co-chief the motion pictures department, though she was allowed to remain as an agent. Her client, Tom Cruise, made it known that to CAA that he was backing her. So I guess fuck Tom Cruise, right? He's a Scientologist. Like, I don't care. I don't like Tom Cruise. He's a Scientologist. And I hate Scientology. But more than that, that's more examples of Zionists in Hollywood punishing people for being anti-genocide. So there's a vested interest in the United States to promote ethnic cleansing and Zionism. And that's because the United States is based upon ethnic cleansing and genocide. I mean, we're like, that's our history. Have we resolved it? No, we haven't. No, we haven't. And you can see its remnants still, because we still we still have people receiving punishment for not backing genocide. And so that's just 3 examples, right? There's lots. I mean, I don't have an offhand, but I'm sure there's lots and lots more where people lost their jobs, lost their sponsorships, lost their position, lost whatever because they were anti-genocide. Oh, this guy, a top science journal fired Michael Eason, a Jewish editor-in-chief, over a pro-Palestinian tweet. So that's the thing about Zionists. They're not at all pro-Jewish. Zionists have nothing to do with Jewish people. Zionism has nothing to do with Jews. It may claim to have something to do with Jews, but it doesn't really. They will attack Jewish people if Jewish people are not on board with the genocide. That's 4 people. Here's 5 people. Here's 5 people. Pope Francis, fired. He was canceled by Hollywood. Why? Because Pope Francis said this is not a war, it's terrorism. The genocide on Gaza is terrorism. So Hollywood has canceled the Pope. Guess we're not going to see any plays or any movies about the Pope because they're going to cancel him. Yeah, dude, it's dangerous to be anti-Zionist in the United States. So at the Macy's Day Parade, At the Macy's Day Parade, a bunch of people, protesters, came out during the parade and undid a banner calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide, because it is a genocide. It's absolutely a genocide. 14,000 people have been killed, non-combatants, not Hamas. 14,000 innocent civilians have been killed by Israel already. How many people were killed by Hamas on October 7th? I think 1,400. So, or 1,200. So Israel has already killed 10 times the number of innocents that Hamas has killed. And for what? To get the same deal that was offered in the beginning, before the ethnic cleansing happened. Hamas already offered to exchange hostages for hostages with Israel, and the Netanyahu government refused. Instead, they wanted to kill 14,000 innocent people before they agreed to do the thing they could have did a month ago without killing 14,000 people. But that Bibi Netanyahu, dude, he's all about a one-state solution. He wants to ethnically cleanse Gaza. He literally wants to terrorize the people of Palestine to convince them to leave so he can take their land. So good on these guys. Check out Grimace back there. Ah! Poor Grimace. There's Grimace, and there's all the Palestinian flags. That's right. So it's like a month later, a month and a half. Well, not quite a month and a half. Oh yeah, dude, it's almost been 2 months. It's almost been 2 months now since October 7th. We're at the end of November now. It's like a week and a half until like 2 months. All right. So what did we see in our week and a half? So a while ago, a couple days ago, well, more than 2 days ago, a while ago, I put this link to contact your representatives. We live in democracy. Is that correct? Yes, we do. We live in democracy. Therefore, if you want to be a good citizen and you want to exercise your democracy muscle, which you should do, right? You should exercise your muscles. Democracy is a muscle. You should exercise it. You should let your representative know. Contact them to let them know that you want them to call for a ceasefire. I contacted my representatives in Oregon. Jeff Merkley, Ron Johnson? No, what's his name? Merkley, the other guy. The other guy, Ron something, and then my two representatives, or my rep. I contacted all three of them to let them know I want to call for a ceasefire. And Jeff Merkley has come out for calling for a ceasefire. That's good, right? That's good. Good on Jeff Merkley. Senator Merkley, and Joe Biden came through with that ceasefire. He made a deal. He's got a ceasefire in place. So yeah, we live in a democracy. Act like it. Contact your reps. Contact your representatives. Let them know. See, Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley already called for a ceasefire. So democracy works, dude. Let your people know. Let your representatives know. Joe Biden was a dumbass, and then he came around and said, "Oh yeah, I shouldn't have been stupid. I shouldn't have questioned the casualty results. Sorry." Well, okay, good. So it works, dudes. It works. We live in a democracy. Your representatives can only represent you if you let them know what you're thinking, and this is a big issue. I don't know. I don't want to support genocide. I don't want to have any part to do with anyone else's genocide. Like, I learned my lesson. I don't want to do any more genocides. So I don't want to help. I don't want to facilitate. I don't want to condone. I want nothing to do with genocide. So I let my representatives know that, hey, their position should also be anti-genocide and to call for a ceasefire. So that's good. Use your political power. That's why we have it. That's why your ancestors fought and died for it. So you would have the political power in order to make your voice known. Contact your representatives. It's so easy nowadays. You can just send emails. It's like easy. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, here. See, last week, the War Cabinet hesitated and ultimately declined to approve a previous Qatari proposal regarding the hostages. The change has to do not only with the terms of the deal, which Israeli sources say improved somewhat over the weekend, but also with the security establishment's understanding that the outcry of the hostages' family is arousing broad public support, and that it will be difficult to continue with a ground maneuver in the southern Gaza Strip should public anger over what will be perceived as abandoning women and children increase, because that's what was happening. The Netanyahu government was going to trade the hostages that the Hamas took in order to take over Gaza and ethnically cleanse Gaza. That was his plan. He's like, you guys take the hostages, and then Israel will genocide Gaza. That'll be the deal. But the problem was, like, it wasn't enough that Americans were freaking out saying, hey, we don't want to support genocide. Joe Biden didn't object forcefully enough. And Bibi Netanyahu was going to go ahead with the genocide, except the families of the hostages wouldn't shut up. They kept talking, save our families, save our families, save our hostages, save this, save the hostages. They wouldn't stop yapping to the press about how about how Hamas took their hostages. So the Bibi Netanyahu was pressured into calling for a ceasefire in order to get the hostages out before he can continue the genocide. So it wasn't that Bibi Netanyahu wanted to save the hostages, it's that he wanted to get the genocide out of the way before he dealt with the hostages. But the families of the hostages wouldn't let him do it. So Aaron Mate says, Israel could have had a hostage deal nearly 1 month ago, but chose a ground invasion instead. It then rejected the same Qatari brokered deal last week. What changed now? According to Amos Harel of Haaretz, which is an Israeli newspaper, the Israeli security establishment has developed the understanding that the outcry of the hostages' families is arousing broad public support, and that it will be difficult to continue a ground maneuver in the southern Gaza Strip should public anger over what will be perceived as abandoning women and children increase. In other words, to keep slaughtering Palestinian women and children in Gaza, Israel must finally stop abandoning the return of Israeli women and children from Gaza. The plan, Bibi Netanyahu's plan was, forget the hostages. I'm going to use use them as an excuse to commit genocide in Gaza and take the land. He wasn't even going to worry about the hostages. He was going to abandon them so he could take the land in Gaza and do a genocide. It was only because the families of the hostages wouldn't stop shouting to the press about their family members that the Bibi Netanyahu government was pressured into accepting a ceasefire to arrange for a hostage transfer. He wasn't going to do it. He wanted to do a genocide more than he wanted the hostages released. That's why I'm saying Bibi Netanyahu is politically a dead man walking. They're dead men walking. He's a dead man walking. Because, like, Israelis hate the guy. Like, it was under his watch that October 7th happened. Under Bibi Netanyahu's watch. Is under Bibi Netanyahu's government. So we're going to the raid farm. It's under the Bibi Netanyahu government that Bibi Netanyahu attempted to overthrow democracy in Israel and install the one-party rule by decree, with him being the ruler. Bibi Netanyahu tried to do that. He tried to get rid of democracy in Israel, and he was going to abandon the women and children of Israel so he can do a genocide in Gaza and take the land. He doesn't care about Jews. I'm telling, Bibi Netanyahu does not care about Jewish people. He only cares about his own power. I mean, he's demonstrated that time and time again. A raid. This is the raid farm. So up above is where the bad guys will come. I'm underground right now, but it's a trap. You see, this is a trap. I will show you. See, that's where they are. But it's a trap, and they're gonna fall in my trap, and I will laugh at them. Ha 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 ha! Do it, fall in. Do it! Ha ha ha! One by one. One by one, they fall. Ha 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 ha! And then I take their goods and steal their items. Ha ha ha! Okay, in the meantime, while we're waiting for the rest of the raid to come down. So Bibi Netanyahu is a bad guy. He's a fascist, guys. He's a fascist. Like, he's literally a fascist. Think of Donald Trump. That's Bibi Netanyahu. He's basically Donald Trump. Like, he wants to overthrow democracy in Israel, and he's willing to sacrifice Israeli women and children to do a genocide, to take land. That's all he cares about. So, speaking of Donald Trump, there was a court case in Colorado. Different people are trying to kick Donald Trump off the ballot in their states, using the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. So, to let you know, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution has a Section 3 that talks about it was adopted after the end of the Civil War, Amendment 14. So that means we fought a civil war first. After we fought the Civil War, we adopted the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, Section 3 says that if you're a Confederate, if you're hey, yo, what's up, Swifty Taken? Yeah, of course I remember you, dude. Thanks for stopping by my last show where but yeah. Okay, anyways, so the 14th Amendment, Section 3 says anyone who waged war against the United States cannot be a senator of any senator or House representative or anybody for any office of the United States. You cannot hold office in the United States again. You're barred from running for office. So they tried to do that in Colorado. The judge came back from Colorado and said, well, my finding of facts, I'm checking out the facts, and from my finding of facts, I can say that Donald Trump did in fact engage in insurrection against the United States. He waged war against the United States. That's true, yes. But if you read Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, it says senators and representatives. And it says other offices of the United States. It never explicitly says the president. So, since he didn't explicitly... Alright, Sophie Taken... Enjoy your big test, dude. I'm going to keep talking about my stuff. Thanks for stopping by, man. And good luck on your test. Okay. Since it didn't explicitly say that you're not allowed to since it didn't explicitly say the president, it didn't say the president. That means the judge is like, oh, because it didn't say the president, that means you can't do it. Which is bullshit. What are you talking about? You can't, it doesn't say the president. Sure, it's good, it's close enough, man. But no. This judge is like, no, can't do it. Because this judge already knows what's happening to other judges in Trump cases. What's happening to other judges in Trump cases? Well, if the judge isn't outright bought by Donald Trump, as in the case of Eileen Cannon, where she's been bought by Donald Trump, so she doesn't get attacked by Donald Trump because she's already working for him. But if you're any other judge, Donald Trump will attack you in the press. He will use his platform to say all sorts of lies about you. If you're a judge or if you work for the judge, he will lie about you. Why would Donald Trump lie and say bad things about you on his platform to millions of people? Why would he do that? Because Donald Trump is hoping that somebody who is a believer in Donald Trump will listen to what Donald Trump says and do violence to the judges or the judges' workers. If they do violence to the judges and the judges' workers, those judges and judges' workers are less likely to want to do work to hold Donald Trump accountable. They just say, oh, I don't want to do this job anymore because it's dangerous. And if no one's going to hold Donald Trump accountable, that's how Donald Trump gets away with his crimes. So, in order to not get in trouble for his crimes, Donald Trump is trying to incite his followers to do violence upon the judges and the judge workers. So this judge in Colorado knows what Donald Trump is doing. She knows that Donald Trump, if she makes a bad ruling about Donald Trump, she's gonna have to suffer the terrorism of Donald Trump's followers when Donald Trump writes bad things about her and sends his shadow army after her. So in order to get around that, she on purpose was obtuse about the president. Like, yeah, it's covered because it says other offices of the United States, and president is an office. You literally hold the office of the presidency. Like, we've heard plenty of people talk about the office of the presidency. The presidency is an office for sure, so it too is covered by the 14th Amendment. But this judge knew better than to make a ruling against Donald Trump, because it would come back on her. So she on purpose punted the question to the Supreme Court of Colorado. She's like, you guys don't pay me enough and don't give me enough protection in order to make a ruling that's not favorable to Donald Trump. So instead of me doing it, me, a lowly court clerk, or a lowly circuit court judge, why don't we kick it up to the highest court in the state of Colorado, the Supreme Court, and let them make the ruling that kicks Donald Trump off the ballot. In that way, they're the ones who have to suffer any heat if Donald Trump decides to attack them. Smart on the judge. You found in the finding of facts, you already found out that Donald Trump committed insurrection. So that part's not under question. The only question is if the presidency is considered an office of the United States, and you will let the Supreme Court of Colorado make that decision. Okay, because we know how they're going to answer. Of course the office of the presidency is an office of the United States. Of course it is. So that's good. Isn't it interesting how Donald Trump's attempts at insurrection have changed from a literal insurrection with violence to law warfare? He's fighting in the courts. He's fighting in the courts in order to not be held accountable. and to buy himself time in order to get more allies inside government, because that's what's going on. You have to look at the Republican Party as the party of the Confederacy. They are there to overthrow the United States. That's what they're there for. There's at least 10 members of Congress who are on board with Donald Trump's attempt to overthrow the United States. At least 10 members of Congress. And Mike Johnson, Speaker Mike Johnson, is one of them, for sure. Yes, he too. He's a Confederate, right? He wants to overthrow the United States. Josh Hawley, was instrumental in trying to overthrow the United States, because him and Loretta Bobbitt and other ones, Marjorie Taylor Greene, were the ones who objected to the certification of the election based on bogus, not even real claims of voter fraud. So by them objecting, they bought time for Donald Trump's mob to break into the Capitol to try to kill Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi. Right? This happened. So those members of Congress are still there. Those insurrectionists are still there. They are absolutely the party of the Confederacy. And you can see the movements that they're taking, right? Because the party of the Confederacy has an ideology, and one of their ideologies is authoritarianism. That is, you want to get rid of democracy. You want to weaken. You want to, as a Confederate, you want to destroy democracy. That is your primary enemy, is democracy. Why would democracy be your enemy if you're a white supremacist? Because in a democracy where you have universal human rights, right? That's the key. That's the thing. In order for democracy to exist, you have to have suffrage. People have to have the right to vote. That means you have to look at humans as citizens as being equal. You can't privilege one group of people over another group of people, because everyone's equal in the ballot box when you vote. And that idea where everyone's equal is antithetical to the belief of a white supremacist. White supremacists believe in their hearts of hearts that there is a natural hierarchy to the world ordained by their white God. Their white God created a hierarchy. And it's just the natural way it is. And if you ever try to change that hierarchy, if you ever try to make people who are not equal into people who are equal, you are literally going against God. You're literally going against God. And it can never work. So white supremacists can never abide by democracy, because democracy presupposes universal values, universal rights. And it holds that humans are equal. Humans are equal. No human is better than another human. No human deserves privileges over another human for just being a human, for being a certain kind of human. That's wrong. So in order so Confederates who are white supremacists, they have to get rid of democracy. So all you have to do in order to find a Confederate, to find a white supremacist, is to look for those people who are doing damage to democracy. That's it. That's all you have to do. Confederates are by nature opposed to democracy. They want to overthrow American democracy and impose white supremacy, minority rule. So all you have to do is identify which policies, which laws, which proposals help democracy, and which laws, policies, and proposals hurt democracy. For example, there was a ruling in the 8th Circuit Court, and the deciding vote was a Trump judge. And this ruling further eroded voting rights in the United States. I don't even have to know that it was a Trump judge to know that the whole thing is a white supremacist move, a Confederate move, because it weakens democracy in the United States. The whole point is to weaken democracy. I keep talking about it like I don't know what it is, and you know why I talk like I don't know what it is? Because I don't know what it is. I have to look it up in order to give you a better example. Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals strikes down Voting Rights Act. That's the search I'm doing. So I'm going to read an NPR story. An appeals court that has struck down a key path for enforcing the Voting Rights Act. So let's read it together. This is important, dude. So it says, a federal appeals court has struck down a key path for enforcing the Voting Rights Act. The new ruling in an Arkansas redistricting lawsuit may set up the next U.S. Supreme Court fight that could further limit the reach of the Voting Rights Act for protections for people of color. Now, remember, the Voting Rights Act was passed in order to protect black people from discrimination. They were given the right to vote. That they have the right to vote, the innate right to vote. They have because they're citizens of the United States, so they have the right to vote. But they were being disenfranchised by white supremacists. White supremacists don't want black people to vote, right? Because they're white supremacists, and voting equalizes human beings. So white supremacists are opposed to democracy. They don't want black people to vote. So white people not white people, but white supremacists did all sorts of bad things in order to stop black people from voting. They would enact poll taxes, which meant you had to pay a tax in order to vote. And if you're poor, you don't have money, so you never paid the tax and you don't vote. That stopped black people from voting. Or it just stopped poor people from voting, right? Because white supremacists believe in a hierarchy. And part of their hierarchy is that rich people are better than poor people. So in their hierarchy, in the white supremacist hierarchy, poor people shouldn't even vote because they're not good enough. Voting is only for rich people who are the elites. They know better, according to white supremacists. So yeah, the poll tax would stop poor people and minorities from voting. So that's terrible. So the Voting Rights Act was passed in order to stop that from happening. There would be literacy tests. Some states would make you pass literacy tests in order to vote. In other words, you were not allowed to vote unless you could pass a test. However, the test was worded in such an ambiguous fashion that they could be graded any way you wanted, so that there's no one correct way of passing the test. In other words, if you are a black person, no matter what you answered on the test, you would fail and could not vote. And if you're a white person, no matter what you did on the test, you would pass and you would be allowed to vote. Because the test really wasn't about literacy, it was whether you were black or white. Right? That's disenfranchisement. That's illegal, and that Voting Rights Act was passed in order to stop that from happening, because white supremacists tried to stop black people from voting. So in other words, there was all sorts of things that white supremacist governments did in order to stop black people from voting. And the Voting Rights Act was a federal level law in order to stop these state governments from doing that. Well, white supremacists didn't like that. They don't like that. So white supremacists want to stop the Voting Rights Act so they can continue to disenfranchise black voters, black American voters. So I can tell by this ruling that because the Voting Rights Act was struck down to make it more difficult for black Americans to vote, I can tell it was pushed forward by white supremacists, by Confederates. I can already tell, right? You can tell now too, because I've given you the standard. It's a very simple standard. You can judge many things in the United States by the simple standard of, does it promote democracy or does it hinder democracy? Very simple standard. They'll try to trick you. They'll try to trick you with words and stuff, but all you got to do is check it against the standard. Does it help democracy or does it take away democracy? So this federal appeals court has struck down the Voting Rights Act, making it harder to enforce the Voting Rights Act, making it easier to disenfranchise black voters, which makes it harder for black people to vote, which weakens democracy. In other words, the 8th District Supreme Court has weakened democracy. So I can assume by the ruling and that the people pushing the ruling were white supremacists, and they're doing it in order to get rid of democracy. So they're Confederates. Simple standard, right? It's simple. It's not that hard of a work. It's not like I need to like be like a super ingenious person in order to use it. No. All I have to do is know what is the standard and then apply my knowledge to it. So this is the standard. I'm going to gather all the information I can about the ruling, about the people involved, and then I apply the standard to it. So here's an example of me doing it. Let me continue the story. Okay, if I continue the story by NPR, it says, private individuals and groups who did not represent the United States government have, for decades, brought the majority of Section 2 cases to the court. Those cases have challenged the redrawing of voting maps and other steps in the election process, with claims that the voting power of people has been minimized. In other words, states controlled by Confederates, Republicans, right? Republican-controlled states, Confederate states, governments would use the power of the government to disenfranchise Black American voters by gerrymandering, drawing the districts in such a way that they choose their own voters, is what they're doing. And what would happen is groups inside that state would see what was happening and go, you can't do that. That's blatantly racist. You're blatantly disenfranchising a whole group of people just because you don't like them. We're going to sue you and take you, our private group is going to sue you and take you to federal court. And for years, that's what happened. The state government, controlled by Confederates, would try to disenfranchise Black Americans, and private groups would watch them do it and then sue them in federal court. That's what would happen. Okay, but U.S. District Judge Lee Rudovsky, an appointee of former President Donald Trump. So Donald Trump put this guy here. Donald Trump put this judge there. So he's a Trump judge. So I'm assuming this guy, because he's favored by Trump, he's a bad guy. He's a white supremacist because Donald Trump favored him. So I'm assuming this guy has a bias toward white supremacy. So this judge, Lee Rudovsky, an appointee of former President Donald Trump, ruled in February 2022 that only the head of the Justice Department, the Attorney General, can bring Section 2 lawsuits. So in other words, for years, these private groups watched Confederate governments draw these racist maps and then would sue the state government, and then the state governments would get slapped down by the federal courts and said, no, you have to redraw your maps. Those are bad maps. That's what happened to Georgia. That's what Georgia's doing right now. They were smacked down by the federal court and told to redraw their maps. So the Confederates in Georgia are redrawing maps, but the maps they're redrawing are still bad. Okay. But this Trump judge said, no. These private groups, they can't do that anymore. Only the U.S. Department of Justice and only the head of the U.S. Department of Justice can ever sue the state for drawing racist maps. So a Trump judge said, no. These private citizen groups, they're doing too much democracy. I'm taking away your democracy and saying only the government can do it, not citizens group. So they're taking away democracy, and they're doing it. Why? So that there will be less people to sue the states, the Confederate states, when they draw these racist maps. Because the U.S. Department of Justice, the head of the Department of Justice, depends on who's the president. When Donald Trump was the president, the Department of Justice was Bill Barr, and that guy is corrupt. He is totally corrupt. Billy Barr was the Attorney General for I forget who, George Bush, I think, and he's the one who buried the Iran-Contra affair. Do you know about the Iran-Contra affair? No, that's because Billy Barr covered it up. Yeah, he's a cleanup guy. He covers up mistakes. So Billy Barr is corrupt. So that's what Billy Barr did once Donald Trump picked Billy Barr to be the Attorney General, and Billy Barr, with his powers, he buried the Mueller report. And he did two things. Billy Barr did two things as Attorney General. He buried the Mueller report. He did at least two bad things. One bad thing is he buried the Mueller report that showed how Donald Trump conspired with the Russian government to overthrow the election in 2016. But good thing, right? Because it's not just the Mueller report. The Senate also did its own report, and the Senate Select Intelligence Committee, and it too came to the same conclusion as the Mueller report, that the Donald Trump administration conspired with the Russian government to overthrow the 2016 election. It's not just the Mueller report. So there's at least two things. But Billy Barr helped cover that up, right? The other thing Billy Barr did was he sicked the FBI on the enemies of Donald Trump. Not on the criminals of the United States, but on the enemies of Donald Trump. Billy Barr wasn't really so much concerned with crime. He was more concerned about consolidating power for Donald Trump and getting rid of the enemies of Donald Trump. So it really, really, really matters who is the head of the Department of Justice, the Attorney General. It really, really matters. So when Donald Trump was the president, he made Billy Barr the head of the Justice Department, and the Justice Department was corrupt. It was weaponized to go after the enemies of Donald Trump. Do you think Billy Barr, picked by Donald Trump, is at all interested in defending democracy? Hell no. So when these Confederate-controlled state governments draw these maps that disenfranchise Black Americans, do you think Billy Barr is gonna sue them? Hell no. It used to be Citizens Group, so Billy Barr wouldn't get a say in it, right? But the Trump judge made sure that Donald Trump's dude would be the only guy to make a say in it, and Donald Trump's dude is not going to defend democracy. He wants to overthrow democracy. Confederate. So yeah. Do you see how that all ties together? All these guys are part of the same group to overthrow the government, to overthrow democracy. I say overthrow the government, but what I mean is overthrow democracy and take over government. They want to seize power, which means they hold on to government, but they no longer do democracy. They just hold on to power. Okay, so on Monday, that lower court ruling was upheld in a 2-1 vote by a 3-judge panel of the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. So for much of the last half-century, courts have assumed that Section 2 is privately enforceable. A deeper look has revealed that this assumption rests on flimsy footing, wrote Circuit Judge Davis Strauss, a Trump appointee. So that's 2 Trump judges. The first Trump judge was this guy. That's the first Trump judge who started the problems. And then this Trump judge was reinforced by another Trump judge, a Trump appointee, right? Donald Trump. And he was joined by who? By Raymond Gruller, who's an appointee of President George W. Bush. Who is President George W. Bush? He is the other president who got into power through a coup. Remember what happened in 2000? In 1999, it came down, the presidential election came down to the state of Florida. The governor of the state of Florida was Jeb Bush, brother of George W. Bush. And it came down to one county, and they were counting the votes in this one county, and they knew that it came down to this one county. So Roger Stone got a gang of white dudes to go down to the counting office and staged an insurrection, attacked and invaded the counting office, terrorized the people that were counting the votes, and made them stop. That gave the time to give the Supreme Court, to give them time to make it a ruling. In a 5-4 decision, Republicans versus Democrats, 5 Republicans, 4 Democrats, voted to choose to be for Donald Trump, or for W. Bush to be the president, and to not count the votes in Florida. They didn't finish counting the votes in Florida. So they just chose, the Republicans chose Donald W. Bush to be president. That was one of the coups that happened. After W. Bush became president, he picked a judge that he knew was against democracy, was a Confederate. So this is 2 Confederate judges. 2 Confederate judges joining another Confederate judge to stop black people from voting. Do you see? Why would they do that? Because they're Confederates, dudes. Do you see how they're all tied together in a nodule? They're a nodule. You can fucking see it. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be like. You don't have to have a degree or anything. All you have to do is know how, have the standard, right? You have to have the standard. If you don't have the standard, you don't know where you're at. You have to have the standard, right? So remember, the standard comes from. The standards come from the elite, the aristocracy. That's where they first came from. I mean, even your farmers had standards, right? But the ones who conceptualized it and crystallized it were the elites, the aristocracy. That was Pindar. You can look it up. What's his Werner Jaeger, Paideia, the Ideals of Greek Culture, Volume 1. In that book, he tells you about Pindar, who was the last of the great aristocratic poets of ancient Greece, before the aristocrats got replaced by the merchants as a ruling class. But he wrote down, he crystallized, he helped crystallize the aristocratic culture of the ancient Greeks in poetry, and he let them. And it was him and another guy who I can't remember. But he let the aristocrats know that even though they were losing their power and even their money, because a lot of them, they still were aristocrats because they held on to something other than mere money. Mere money wasn't their standard. They were literally held to higher standards because they come from royal blood. So regular stuff for regular people was not good enough for aristocrats. Aristocrats held themselves to higher standards. And it was that standard. It's that standard which sets you apart from all the common people. Well, what's to stop common people from coming along and picking up that standard too? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. There's no difference between aristocratic blood and common blood. There's no difference. The thing that sets you apart, that standard, can be picked up by anybody. So even the common people, even you common working class people who never went past high school, even you can do it too, dudes. You guys aren't dumb. You guys aren't stupid. You just never given the opportunity, right? That part wasn't developed. You had to go to work. I get it. So But here it is. I'm helping you out, right? I'm letting you know the standard. Anybody can use a standard and hold themselves to a higher standard. It's all about the standard. Once you have the standard, boom, now you got the standard. Here's another standard I'm giving you. The way to determine if you're a Confederate or a Unionist. Like, is the policy, is the thing, is the law, is the person helping democracy or restricting democracy? That's a standard. That's it. That's all you got to do. That's the standard. Now you have that standard, right? All you do is you apply it to these things, to these groups. Now you're going to see, and I'm telling you that there's this group called Confederates, Republican Confederates. They're Republicans, they're also Confederates. There's this group, and they're trying to overthrow democracy. Why? Because their whole ideology is anti-democratic. It's the antithesis of democracy, right? So they're trying to get rid of our democracy, American democracy, right? Our democracy that our ancestors fought and died for, right? This is our democracy. This is ours. We need to defend it because they're trying to kill it. So you can tell who's hurting it and who's helping it by telling who's, like, by their policies, by the standard. So this thing right here, this whole ruling, Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals strikes down key part of the Voting Rights Act. And I explained to you what part they struck down. It used to be regular people could sue the government if the government was disenfranchising them. But this Trump judge said no, only the Attorney General can do that. Not just regular people, only the Attorney General. And the Attorney General is appointed by the President. So it becomes an inherently political decision. Not based on justice, but on who's the president. If it's President Joe Biden, yeah, he's going to check that stuff out. If it's President Donald Trump, no, he's not interested in defending democracy. They just took power away from regular citizens to give it to the president who's not interested in defending democracy, and that result is going to be that black people are disenfranchised. They lose the ability to vote. Not because they're bad, but because white supremacists don't want them to vote. So this judge said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to make it harder for black people to vote," and that judge was put there by Donald Trump. It was appealed, and then the appeal also agreed with this Trump judge. Who are the judges that agreed with this Trump judge? Another Trump judge and a judge from W. Bush, a president who was put into power through a coup. So two presidents who got into power both through coups. The first one, by when Roger Stone sent the Brooks Brother riot to stop the votes from being counted. The second one, Donald Trump literally received help from the Russian government in order to seize power. So two judges from two presidents who did not win through democracy acted together in order to make it to weaken democracy. It's an easy standard. It's easy. But you can see what just happened. Now I'm not just talking shit. Now you can see what I'm talking about. It's an actual thing. It's an actual thing. So this is a bad ruling, right? This is bad. You like, it's bad. Because it weakens democracy, and it makes it takes away power from private citizens, concentrates it in the hands of the presidency, and ultimately weakens democracy by letting Confederate states make it harder to vote. Now, maybe you can try to challenge me on the definition of Confederate states, but you're gonna lose. That's pretty well defined. You can't even challenge me on Republicans being Confederates, because that's what they literally tried to overthrow the government, and there's literally members in Congress right now serving, still trying to overthrow the government, overthrow democracy. So you can't challenge me on that either. Like, I'm unassailable, guys. You can't even challenge me. But here, remember how I told you? So that ruling's bad. Why? Because it says the only person that can challenge a racist map, the only person that can challenge a racist map are not citizens, but the only person is the Attorney General. And the Attorney General depends on who is the president, because the president is the one who appoints the Attorney General. So, if it's Donald Trump, your Attorney General is Billy Barr, and Billy Barr is a Confederate who weaponized the federal government to go after the enemies of Donald Trump. In other words, to protect fascists and to go after the enemies of fascists. How do I know? How do I know? Because the FBI literally labels anti-fascists and anti-racists as violent extremists. Why would the FBI label the enemies of fascists as terrorists? Why? Okay, a recently released Federal Bureau of Investigation document titled Domestic Terrorism Symbols Guide links common protester symbols to terrorism, another marker in a common theme of conflating militant protest for social justice with deadly terrorist violence within the United States. Groups like the American Civil Liberties Union and the Brennan Center have raised warnings about such documents, citing inadequate protections for people's constitutional rights. In a letter to the Department of Homeland Security's Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, on July 27th, the ACLU voiced deep concern about the DHS's domestic violent extremism label, standards for collecting and disseminating information to state and local law enforcement agencies, and the impacts these labels can have on disparately surveilled and policed communities. History has shown that partnerships with local and state law enforcement agencies too often paint innocent civil and human rights associates as violent extremists, despite never exhibiting such behavior. From Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X to Black Lives Matter protesters in Ferguson, Missouri, labeled as black identity extremists, and Stop Cop City protesters charged with mafia-style crimes, proof of targeting groups speaking up for civil rights and racial justice continues today, noted by the newly released FBI document. In other words, the FBI historically has mislabeled movements fighting for social justice as terrorist groups, mixing them up in the same bag as Nazis and white supremacists and insurrectionists. Why would you do such a thing? Why would you do such a thing? These two groups are absolutely opposite. They're opposite. One group, white supremacists, insurrectionists, Confederates, Nazis, historically use violence in attempts to overthrow democracy. Remember democracy? The whole thing we're supposed to be based upon? Remember, we have these ideals, American ideals, truth, justice, and liberty, right? We spread democracy far and wide. That's the ideal. That's the ideal, right? Truth, justice, and liberty for all, for all, for all. Not just for, that's the ideal that I signed up for and that I'm pushing for, right? That's the thing I'm pushing for when we say United States. But there's this other group of people that want to overthrow that whole thing. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in truth, justice, and liberty. They want to tear the whole thing down. And they will use violence to do it. Why would, it serves no purpose, no good purpose, to conflate the two, to push the two together. It does nothing. Like, all it would do is confuse the people working. Because if you're an on the ground guy, like a guy at your local police office, and you get a bulletin from the FBI that shows terrorist symbols that have like that mix up both Nazi side and like anti-Nazi side together, you're, as a cop, you're not gonna have time to go research which one's real and which, you're gonna assume that's the way they are for both of them, and that's gonna color your entire perception when you go out there and deal with it. It's gonna mess you up. So why is the FBI doing this? Why would the FBI do it? Remember who was the Attorney General under Donald Trump? Billy Barr, the outlaw Billy Barr, the Attorney General who weaponized the American government to go after regular ass Americans, and the enemies of Donald Trump is what he did. So you can ask, how did January 6th even happen? How did that even happen when all the people knew it was gonna happen? How did the FBI not know it was gonna happen? How come there was no like backup for the capital city police for like 4 hours? How come? Why was stuff all messed up like that? Like, how come everyone else knew except for the federal government that January 6th was going to happen? How come? Well, if you look at who's the Attorney General, it was Billy Barr. It was Billy Barr. And Billy Barr, on purpose, told the FBI not to look at the Nazis or the white supremacists or the insurrectionists. No, he told them on purpose to look for the enemies of white supremacists and Nazis and insurrectionists. He's like, look for the enemies of white supremacists and Nazis and insurrectionists. I want you to look for the enemies. So, yeah, dude, there was an FBI informant inside with the Proud Boys and with the Oath Keepers. I mean, did you pay attention to the trials? Because do you know that Mr. Oath Keeper dude here, Stuart Rose, is in prison for like 22 years, dude. He's in federal prison for 22 years. Why? Because he tried to overthrow the fucking government. He's a terrorist. He tried to overthrow democracy. The people made a choice, and he tried to stop the people's will from being enacted. Yeah, that guy's in prison. He's in prison. He should be. So he's like, you know, the reason why that guy's in prison is because people testified against him. You know, the government had a case, and they presented their evidence in court to 12 random ass people, and the 12 random ass people agreed that yeah, the government proved its case. That guy's a fucking traitor. That guy goes to prison. They sent him to prison for 22 years. One of the guys inside that court case was informed to the FBI. He informed the FBI, and he had instructions from the FBI as to what to look for, and instructions that this guy was given as to what to look for. Because you got to think, how could the FBI have a guy embedded in the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers? How could they have their dude embedded inside and not know that January 6th was going to happen? How could they do that? How could that even be possible? Well, because the dude testified in court. He was asked this question. He's like, why didn't you guys stop it? He testified in court that he was instructed by the FBI to look for Antifa and for Black Lives Matter. What? He's like, yeah. on January 6th, the only instruction I was told was to look out for an Antifa guy that was supposed to be there. That was my entire instruction. They didn't care about January 6th or anything. They didn't care. They said, so he testified to this in court. It's like, wait, the FBI under Billy Barr missed January 6th because they were looking for Antifa? What? And then this report comes out, right? This report comes out. What is this FBI report? Check out what's on their FBI report. What is this bullshit? So this is a list of from their thing. They were calling these people terrorists. So if you want to know why the FBI didn't see what was happening on January 6th, it was because they were looking for these things and not for the Proud Boys and not for the Nazi right-wing symbols like this guy or like this guy right here, Joey Biggs. He's in prison. Wait, there's one more guy. No, there's one more guy. Hold on, I gotta minimize this for a second. I need to see my desktop. I hope it doesn't kill everything. Yeah, can I windowize it? It's gonna kill everything. No, not that one. Just killed it. I knew it. Not that one either. Where'd it go, dude? Where'd it go? Oh yeah, here, this one. That guy. All right, you see those symbols here? This guy, Jeremy Bertino, he's in prison right now. He's in prison. He's a convicted traitor. He was convicted for his actions on January 6th. I lost my viewers, dude, because my Minecraft crashed. It's crashed again. This guy, this symbol's right here. Right Wing Death Squad. WRDS. Right Wing Death Squad. Look what he's wearing. Look at all this gear he's wearing. Look at that patch. Like, this guy is a white supremacist. The FBI was not looking at the white supremacists. The FBI was looking for the enemies of the white supremacists. That's why the FBI didn't catch January 6th. All right. And here's more proof, because yeah, they're looking for the wrong things, dude. They were looking the wrong way on purpose. So it matters a big deal about who's Attorney General. And who's Attorney General matters a big deal on who's president. And so Donald Trump wants to take power away from the people, because that's democracy. Democracy instills the power into the people and spreads it out. But authoritarianism, Nazis, white supremacists, insurrectionists want to overthrow democracy. They want to take away power from the people and put the power in the hands of the elite. Who are the elite? The people at the top. So Donald Trump's judges took power away from people. People used to be able to check the government. The people that used to be able to sue the government, to check the government. But Donald Trump's judge took that power away from the people and put it into the Attorney General. And the Attorney General is chosen by the president. So if Donald Trump's the president, it ultimately means Donald Trump has the power. You take away power from the people and you concentrate it into the hands of the president, into the hands of the elite. Do you see how that works? You see how that works? So if Donald Trump wants the power to be in the hands of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's attorney general does things in order to make sure Donald Trump stays in power. So Donald Trump picks the attorney general, Billy Barr. Billy Barr tells the FBI agents, yo, don't look at the Nazis. Don't look at the white supremacists who are trying to overthrow the government on January 6th. Don't look at them. Instead, look at the people who fight Nazis. Look at the people who push back against corruption. Look at the people who fight against white supremacists. Those are the enemies. Those are the people that the FBI should be looking at. That's what the Attorney General said. Do you see what I mean? Fascists want to concentrate the power into the hands of the elite, and then the elite use that power to go after the enemies of the elite. That's why Donald Trump is so dangerous. That's why white supremacists are so dangerous. That's why they do what they do. You don't have to be college educated in order to figure it out. All you need to do is be able to have the standard and then be able to take measurements. It's real easy. Have a standard and take measurements. Like, you do that at work anyways. A lot of you do that at work anyways. You have a standard. Your standard is the ruler. And you take measurements so you know what it is. So this is the same thing. I've given you the standard, right? The ruler. What is the ruler? What is the standard? Does it help or hinder democracy? You can measure now go out and measure judges, you can measure laws, you can measure policies, you can measure all sorts of stuff by the standard of does it help or does it hinder democracy. Traditionally, white supremacists are against democracy. They might say they're pro-democracy, but they only want democracy for the elite. Or if they have a democracy, it's not real because the result is already determined. You already know what the answer is going to be. So, since you have the standard, all you have to do now is take measurements. You don't have to believe me, right? All I do is I point out like news clippings and I give you a bit of history for context. But like I'm not special. Like I have to go look it up. Just look it up if you don't know. Get the context. And then you can answer that question and apply the standard and figure it out for yourself. And then you can, once you start doing that, you'll recognize that, oh yeah, one side is really, really pushing against democracy. And the other side is really, really pushing for democracy. Then you figure out, well, what is your role in that? What is your place in that? Where do you stand in that? I watched a video of a woman, and it sounds like she's from Appalachia, from the South. I'm not sure. But she's a white woman, and she was unfurling a big Trump 2024 flag, and how she was real excited about Donald Trump. Like, I would never ever convince her otherwise. Right? I can never tell her otherwise because like she's not really based on facts. she like I couldn't. To her, it's not so important that Donald Trump is overthrowing democracy and the Constitution. It's more like her team is winning. You're never gonna convince it. Like that person's gone, right? Like her vote is gonna counter my vote. As much as I know, and as powerful as much as I want to defend democracy, she's gonna counter my vote with her one vote for Donald Trump to overthrow everything and burn it to the ground for white supremacy. You can tell her it's for white supremacy, and she may not believe it. You can tell her Donald Trump's a fascist, she may not believe it. You can tell her how bad Donald Trump was, but she won't believe it. Because she sees herself as a good person. She's not a bad person, she's the good guy. So, it's dangerous, man, that and how could that even exist? It's because we have such layers of disinformation. That's why we have so much disinformation, so much ignorance. That's our real enemy, is the ignorance. If people could see for themselves the truth and get rid of the ignorance, they would make good decisions, and we wouldn't have half the problems we do now. If we just get rid of ignorance, ignorance is the true enemy. If people could, like, I don't know, man. There are people who are not ignorant. They're like, oh yeah, I fully am aware that they're white supremacists, and they push for it. Well, that's because they believe in white supremacy, which is a form of ignorance. Ah! Which is still, see, it's still, white supremacy is still in ignorance. It's still ignorance. Yeah, but that kind of ignorance, maybe you need LSD or something. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, well, I did my show, right? I got it out there. Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't finish. There's another section I wanted to talk about. The local section. Now we're getting local. Okay. So, in general, we know the history of the United States. About 90 years ago, was it 90 years ago? Individual states started to ban marijuana. They instituted a ban on marijuana. And they did it for different reasons. In the South, migrant workers would use marijuana to help them work, because it was great to help them work. So, but and it's great, right? If that they could use their labor in the South, but they didn't like Mexican people, so in order to harass the migrant workers, they passed marijuana laws, because they're the only ones who ever used it. Americans didn't know about it yet, so only migrants used it. So they passed laws against marijuana in order to get migrant workers in the South. And then in the Northeast, black jazz musicians discovered marijuana and would use it, right? It would be in their jazz clubs. They're called jazz cigarettes. So as a way of going after, jazz and black people in general, they passed anti-marijuana laws. And then Harry Anslinger came along at the federal level. He lost his job enforcing alcohol prohibition, so he needed a new job. So he worked with his buddy in the newspaper mogul. I forget who he was, yellow paper guy. I don't know. Tabloid stuff. Wrote terrible stuff in the newspapers. Had terrible newspapers, but he had a lot of them, and he wrote terrible stuff. They worked together to demonize marijuana and make it a federal crime in the 1930s. So it started as a racist thing against black people and Mexicans, and it turned into a federal thing they could use against black people and minorities and Mexicans and white people too eventually. But yeah. And so what that did is that started the criminalization of drug use, because they expanded that idea that you could criminalize drug use. Drug use is a social thing, right? It's a social problem. It's a social problem. There's nothing inherently criminal about drug use. There's nothing. It doesn't hurt anyone except the person using the drug. There's nothing inherently criminal about drug use. It's a health problem, a social problem. There's social problems associated with excessive drug use, and there's health problems associated with excessive drug use. But there's no criminal problems. Criminal problems are entirely socially made. The criminality of drug use and all the problems associated with the criminality of drug use are entirely socially made. because they don't come from the drug use itself. Instead, we created a system that makes these problems. So for years and years and years, we criminalized drug use. So that served as like that served a bunch of problem or things. It expanded the incarceration state and imprisoned millions of black people. And once you imprison black people, a lot of those black people came from states where if you ever have a felony, you totally lose the right to vote forever. You can never ever vote. Now remember, if you're a white supremacist, you don't want black people to vote. So if you basically the criminalization of drug use created a way to disenfranchise lots of black people and stop them from voting. And you make a virtual slave population by using slave labor, since you don't have actual slaves anymore. Ouch. So like for years and years and years, that's how the United States operated. It criminalized drug use. So what the result was, it expanded the number of imprisoned people in the United States. It greatly imprisoned a lot more black people and disenfranchised them so they can never vote again. It created this entire bureaucracy that created jobs. And it started expanding into schools. By putting police officers into schools, you can start a school to prison pipeline where you start the incarceration process at a much earlier age to just disenfranchise. So you basically you monetize the warehousing of human beings. And we did that for years and years and years. Drug use didn't go down, it went up. The prison rate went up. Crime went up. The harms associated with drug use went up. So all sorts of problems happened out of it, right? All sorts of problems. You have like the diseases spreading around. You have like cartels emerging from the black market that are now strong enough to rival like entire governments. You have like tons of human misery. That's the result of the criminalization of drugs. That's what you've done. That's the end result of the massive increase in human misery. That's what you've accomplished. Okay, we're already there, right? That's where we are right now today, right here. Massive human misery. We have the warehousing of human beings over non-violent offenses. And we've created a massive criminal network entirely of our own making, entirely funded by the market we've created for drugs that only they can use. Only criminals can use. That's what we've done. So, in order to address this problem, enlightened people are like, you know what? How about we stop criminalizing drugs? If we stop criminalizing drugs and treat it as a social and medical problem, we could alleviate a whole lot of human misery. Yeah, you're gonna cut out some people from profit. If you don't send people to incarceration, the prisons don't make money. Cops don't make money when you're incarcerating people. when you don't incarcerate people, because cops made a lot of money through something called civil forfeiture, where they would just come and steal people's stuff, and the people would have to prove that it's theirs or they couldn't get it back, and the cops would auction off the stuff they stole and keep the profits. Like, it's stupid, dude. It's horrible. It's horrible. This is real. This is what's really going on. Like, they've taken steps to try to fix it, but yeah. So Oregon passed a law, Measure 110. The Oregon voters said, hey guys, let's stop the criminalization of drugs and try something different. Well, of course, Who are the people that want to criminalize drugs? Law enforcement wants to criminalize drugs because that's job, a crime. They need enforcement. That's what they do. That's what the cops do, right? Enforce stuff. That's an easy job for them is drug enforcement. Prisons also want to criminalize drug use because that's their source for bodies. Drug use entails all sorts of other crimes that you can tag on to get people to be in prison for longer. So yeah, they want to keep it going. They're against measure 110. They want to criminalize it. So let's talk about it. Measure 110. The story from the Associated Press. Oregon's first-in-the-nation drug decriminalization law faces growing pushback amid fentanyl crisis. Oregon's pioneering decriminalization law is facing backlash amid a surge in public drug use fueled by fentanyl and an increase in synthetic opioid overdose deaths. The measure will be among the top issues in the upcoming legislative session starting February. Republicans, Confederates, white supremacists have proposed re-implementing criminal penalties for drug possession. So remember who benefits from this. Prisons and cops. Law enforcement. Remember, drug use is a crime because of its racist roots. Because black people are over-policed, so they're more likely to get imprisoned, more likely to lose their right to vote, more likely to get incarcerated and stuck in the process, more likely to have their life drained away by the incarceration system, right? So it's a racist system. So, and it's being pushed by who? By Confederates, Republicans, white supremacists. So white supremacists have proposed re-implementing the criminalization for drug use. Even top Democrats who back the law now say they're open to amending it. Federal data shows Oregon saw the biggest increase in synthetic opioid deaths since 2019 among states that have reported their numbers. Among states that have reported. Oregon's first-in-the-nation law, enacted in early 2021, decriminalized the possession of small amounts of drugs and directed the state's cannabis tax revenue toward addiction treatment services. Okay, let's keep going. So those caught with small amounts of drugs can have the citations dismissed by calling a 24-hour hotline to complete an addiction screening within 45 days. But those who don't do a screening are not penalized for failing to pay the fine. Because paying a fine is only a fine if you're poor. If you're rich, a fine means nothing, right? It's a big deal. So it's only a penalty imposed upon poor people. And who are the ones most likely to be caught with drugs? Poor people. So the law says to call this hotline or we're going to charge you $100. But now it says we're not going to charge you $100 even if you don't call the hotline. Only 1% of people who receive citations for possession sought help. So hey, it worked for 1%. 1%, it helped somebody. So instead of sending these people to jail and having them with fines they have to pay, instead it helped somebody. Only 1%, but it helped somebody. I call that success. What are you talking about, dude? That seems great. You helped somebody. Somebody that would not be helped if they were put in jail. That's great. And it didn't cost the taxpayer money by having to put him in jail. So there was a test. There was a study done. The effectiveness of compulsory drug treatment, a systematic review. Despite widespread, you can see I'm still sick. Ooh, I should put on tea. So let me keep going. Like, understand, I'm still sick, guys. I'm doing this because I feel, I still feel, I feel unease about our democracy. Like, I'm doing this not for my benefit. No one's even fucking watching my streams, man. But I'm doing it because I really, really believe in democracy. I believe in our country. I believe in the United States, in the higher ideal of the United States. That I believe that the United States must fulfill its promises. It must fulfill its promises in order, if it ever wants to be absolved of its original sin, the sins of its origin. If it ever wants to be absolved of its ethnic cleansing, first you have to be aware of it. And, so you can be aware of the horror that's been committed in your name, and then take steps to not only make sure it never happens again, but to fulfill the promise of the United States. What is the promise of the United States? Truth, justice, and liberty for everyone, where every human is created equal. Every human is equal. No one human has privilege over another human. We are all equal. And if the United States can fulfill that promise, then yes, I will help you. I have, but I'm aware that there are forces in the United States who don't believe in that promise, and who want to overthrow that promise, and want to go back to slavery and genocide, and those are my enemies, and they scare me. That's why I'm doing this. For love of those who believe in democracy and fear of those who do not. So here, we already checked this out, right? We already checked this out. So what this did was, there are some places that have like mandatory drug treatment. So if you're caught by the court with drugs, you are ordered by the court to take drug treatment, like drug detox, whatever, even if you don't want to. And many times, not only do you have to do it, you have to pay for it yourself. So if you're poor, if you're already poor, now you got not only do you have to take time from working to go do this class, now you also have to pay for it. Like, how fucked up is that? It's majorly fucked up, man. That's not at all going to help people get better. That's not even going to help people. That's going to make it even worse, dudes. So now it's only a problem, again, a worse problem for poor people. So they checked it out. This group here said, well, let's fucking look. Instead of just like talking blah, 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 let's actually fucking look about what's actually happening. Let's actually see what's going on. So they said, despite widespread implementation of compulsory treatment modalities for drug dependence, there has been no systematic evaluation of the scientific evidence on the effectiveness of compulsory drug treatment. So these guys went ahead and did it. What did they find out? What did they find out? Da-da-da. I fucking love this shit. I love this shit. Not only are we fucking around, we're finding out. That's why I fucking love it. Of an initial 430 studies identified, 9 quantitative studies met the inclusion criteria. So only they only got 9. Studies evaluated compulsory treatment options, including drug detention facilities, short and long-term inpatient treatment, community-based treatment, group outpatient treatment, and prison-based treatment. 3 studies reported no significant impacts of compulsory treatment. 2 studies found equivocal results. 2 studies found negative impacts. And 2 studies observed positive impacts. So in other words, so 3 found nothing. 2 were like, and 2 were for sure bad. So you got a lot, like it was bad. It was bad, or or uh, or like no change, and only 2 were good. Only 2 of 9 did it turn out very good. So, evidence does not, on the whole, suggest improved outcomes related to compulsory treatment approaches, with some studies suggesting potential harms. Given the potential for human rights abuses within compulsory treatment settings, non-compulsory treatment modalities should be prioritized by policymakers seeking to reduce drug-related harms. In other words, when you force people to undergo drug treatment, you open up vulnerable people to yet another avenue where they can be abused or exploited. Like, not all these like halfway houses are run by good people, you know? You ever see that movie, A Scanner, or you ever read that book, A Scanner Darkly? Yeah, dude. Philip K. Dick. That guy was a junkie too, right? I guess. I wouldn't say a junkie, but you know. He had his deals going. Put some honey in there too, that'll help. Honey. But he wrote about like these halfway houses. They're incentivized to keep people rolling back in, because that's how they get their money, is people rolling through them. And they do harsh things to people in order to to exploit them or abuse them. And they're if you have to be there, if you're court ordered to be there, and you're in a bad position, man. You're court ordered to be there, and you can't leave, and no one believes you because you're there because you have drug dependency. Like, it's the worst. Oh man, that's a lot better. Don't tip on me now. Okay. So New York Times did a story by dude, come on, help me out a little bit. Maya Svelovitz. They said wrote this story about, in the New York Times, why forced addiction treatment fails. And what she said is that voluntary rehab has a better track record and is less likely to harm the people than it is intended to help. Criminalization and coercion have helped create a patchwork of addiction programs that is harsh, low quality, underfunded, understaffed, and too often fraudulent. Since legally mandated care is often only the way to get immediate and free treatment, a damaging cycle continues. People aren't going to get better because it's not really good. It's not real. It's court ordered. They don't have a choice in it. And they're incentivized for people to fail, so they keep coming back. The data does not show that it's beneficial to put someone in jail or prison or to force them against their will to go to treatment. This is the thing. Only 2 studies found a small benefit in short-term recovery. This is in contrast with the strong literature on voluntary medication use for opioid addiction, which shows that it can reduce mortality by 50% or more. So why is forced rehab so politically popular? Legal coercion undermines Legal coercion undermines many aspects of effective addiction therapy. It can be difficult to trust providers whose job involves reporting on you to a court. Since relapse is common and often leads to legal consequences, this can discourage disclosure. Coercion can also smother the internal desire to change, which is known to be critical for long-term successes. People have in their brains this idea of punishment, punishment, punishment. Like that's going to fix anything. We've been doing that for like 90 years or like 85 years or something. We've been doing punishment and prison for 85 years, and it hasn't gotten better. It's time to do something different. We have the science. We already know it doesn't work. We already know that all it does is create misery. In other words, spending more on reducing barriers to care and housing and improving the quality of treatment so that people with addiction actually want to participate will be far more effective than adding yet more money for courts and cops. But if fewer people were forced to simply accept what's offered, programs would have to become friendlier. It's basic capitalism. Customer service is better when businesses compete than when customers have no choice. So now I'm going back to the Statesman's Journal. So you know what? Yeah, you're right. Oregon passed as Measure 110, which did decriminalized use, and Oregon became the #1 state for opioid overdose deaths in 2019. Okay, what was #2 state? Oh, #2 was Washington State. Washington State, which saw its estimated synthetic opioid overdose deaths increase 7-fold when compared to those same time periods. So it's not just Oregon, it's also Washington. So nationally, overdose deaths involving synthetic opioids such as fentanyl roughly doubled over that time span. Roughly 2/3 of all deadly overdoses in the U.S. in the 12 months ending June 30th involved synthetic opioids, federal data shows. Supporters of Oregon's law say it was confronted by a perfect storm of broader forces, including the COVID-19 pandemic, a mental health workforce shortage, and the fentanyl crisis, which didn't reach fevered pitch until after the law took effect in early 2021. So, a group of Oregon lawmakers recently traveled to Portugal, which decriminalized the personal possession of drugs in 2021. So the only Republican, white supremacist, on the trip said that Portugal's approach was interesting, but couldn't necessarily be applied to Oregon. Well, why not? Why could you not apply Portugal's system with Oregon? Portugal decriminalized drug use, and their drug use went down. Well, the white supremacist says, no, we can't do that here. Well, Republicans are white supremacists. We can't do that here because the biggest glaring difference is that they're still not dealing with the fentanyl and meth. I don't know. They don't have fentanyl and meth over there, do they? I don't know. She said, noting the country also has universal health care. So, why can't we have universal health care? Oh, that's right, Republicans. She is like, oh, so this Republican lawmaker said Americans can't do what Portugal's doing because Americans don't have universal health care. Americans don't have universal health care because Republicans block it. She's a Republican. Why did they quote the only Republican to go on the trip? Why not quote any Democrats? Oh my God. Ooh. Dude, I just killed it all. All right, here. Despite public perception, the law has made progress by directing $265 million in dollars of cannabis tax revenue towards standing up the state's new addiction treatment infrastructure. Standing up. They had to build it from nothing, guys. That doesn't just happen out of nowhere. Come on, give it a break. The law also created what are known as behavioral health resource networks in every county, which provide care regardless of the ability to pay. Good. The networks have ensured about 7,000 people entered treatment from January to March of this year, doubling from nearly 3,500 people from July through September 2022, state data shows. So in other words, it's like as it's rolling out, it gets better and better and better. Measure 110 is getting better and better the more it rolls out. We're the first in the nation. Good job, Oregon. So yeah, it's going to be a bit rough, but I mean, like, what are we going to do? Do you want to go back to the old way of warehousing human beings and criminalizing poverty? Because whenever there's a fee or a fine, you're only really hurting poor people. If you're a rich guy, you don't even fucking care. You don't even care. The law doesn't apply to you at that point. That's not a good law if the law only applies to poor people. So we already see that this is helping because it's already helping people. It's already helping people. Let's look at Portugal. I'll look at Portugal's drug experiment. What's working and what's not. Within the first 8 years of this new approach, all seemed well. HIV transmission rates were down, one of the decision's motivating factors. Prison populations fell 16%. And overdose rates were also declining as public funds shifted from prisons to rehabilitation clinics. It works. It works. It works. It works. More recent data shows the darker side of the long-term effects of Portugal's experiment, however. Okay. A national survey released this year shows illicit drug use has increased 12.8% in 2022, with overdoses in Lisbon hitting a 12-year high, nearly doubling from 2019 to 2023. The Wall Street Journal reported earlier this year. Drug-related debris littered on the streets of Porto have also surged 24% between 2021 and 2022, the report continues. Okay, so that sounds like Portland, right? Today, crime in Portugal is on the rise, increasing 14% from 2021 to 2022 and 2.4% from 2019. So a little bit. However, in the last 10 years, the country is still 18% lower than the average for the last decade. It's also important to note which crimes are leading this year. Cyber attacks, for example, are increasing, while violent or serious crimes are decreasing. In 2022, violent and serious crime only represented 3.9% of all reported crime in Portugal. So in other words, it shifted. Yeah, crime increases, but it was cyber crime, not violent crime. Drug use is up, overdoses are down, prison population is down, and on average still 18% lower than the decade before. So, still, the increase in crime like driving under the influence, drug and precursor trafficking, and theft have left some Portuguese police, the police, see, it's always the law enforcement, dudes, always authority that wants more power, believing the country's decriminalization experiment is a leading cause. They have no proof, they have no evidence, they just want to say whatever they can in order to give themselves more power. Gotta be aware of those police types. Homelessness is also steadily increasing in Portugal, although issues far more complicated than drug abuse seem to be driving it, with the invasion of Ukraine spiking food prices and inflation reaching a 30-year high last October. Oh shit. So Portugal's got other issues. They're not a perfect example of the United States, but a perfect analog. Not a perfect analog of the United States. They're in the EU and all, but still, we can look at them for Oregon. That's not a bad state to be compared to. Portugal, I hear, is beautiful. Portuguese people are beautiful. Yeah, what are you talking about? Portuguese. So yeah. So in other words, I believe in Measure 110. I believe in the people that are working to implement Measure 110. I believe in the mission of minimizing the amount of human suffering, diverting people away from jail and prison, away from the carceral system, and towards systems that can get them help. Maybe they're ready, maybe they're not, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better than meeting up with a police officer or being forced to go into drug treatment. And it's the first in the nation. This Oregon is the beginning. Oregon is the leader, is the pioneer for a good cause this time. We're doing good. I think this will be good. The whole world is watching Oregon. Believe it. Believe it. Don't poo-poo this idea, guys. This is a great idea. If you don't believe this idea, you have 49 other states to go check out, see how they're doing. And recall the history that brought us here. That same idea of criminalization. That's the whole thing that got us to this position. I think it's great that we're doing something different. That's more humane, more just, more in line with what we can see with our eyes. So therefore, more in line with truth. I think if a lot of these problems that we have that stem from ignorance can be solved if people have a good standard and they have the good information. Just the information is not enough. You got to have the standard. So now you got to know, well, how do you evaluate information? You need a standard for information. So that's a bit trickier. That's for another time. But all right then. I think this is a good time, man. 2 hours. So I had like no one watch. That's all right. This is to get that information out there, build that narrative. Peace. Find some way to extend that ceasefire. Find some way to extend that ceasefire so that it never breaks. Continue to exchange hostages. And Joe Biden, if you want to be like, I mean, already you've done some amazing stuff. But if you want to be like GOAT level, find the state of Palestine. Find where it is. Find the state of Palestine. And show it to others. To everyone. Show it to the world. Find the state of Palestine and show it to the world. Okay, until next time, America. Peace. Pogo Kiddo out. Stay healthy. Stop.